Good afternoon. I'm Patty Brown. Welcome to my podcast. It is called The Town That Raised Me. If you haven't visited before, the book that I've been working on for a while, I'm working on several things. I'm a writer. I love poetry, and I'm working on a longer novel. And then I've written this book about the town where I grew up in the South, rural South, not too far from Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's the stories and the people that really I remember, first of all, and that people that just really made a difference in my life, and the things that happened that really influenced me. And although, you may have lived in a different town, maybe not even in the South, maybe not even in rural areas, some of this may resonate with you. I've shared my stories with different people, and they seem to resonate. I grew up in a different time. It was before technology. And so things were very, very different. And so today's story is, it's actually kind of a narrative poetry. I was just trying something different in the book. And this story happened maybe when I was, I don't know, maybe 7 years old or something like that. And the reason I chose this story is several things. I've had several things happen to me since the last podcast. And I apologize. My son told me, just pretend there's a million people out there listening to you. And I do. I just pretend there's a million people out there. And but I'm kind of delayed on this third podcast. I'm kind of have my son is like my producer because he's very techie, and I'm pretty good, but I'm nothing like he is. And so I haven't kind of got the ropes on how to do everything yet. And so he's still kind of helping me. And the last 10 days, he has just been swamped with final projects in college and he's studying for exams. And so he has his final exam on Monday of next week. So I just kind of gave him a break instead of nagging him to please do this for me. So I apologize that this one is late. I'm going to try to get on a very regular schedule and have a day where I upload the podcast on a regular basis. So anyway, here we are though at last. So the reason I picked the story is because, I think we're living in a time right now where differences are not being accepted, and they're not really cherished like they should be. And I think one of the most wonderful things we can do for our children is let them be themselves. And there's nothing better than for people just to feel comfortable in who they are. I was very fortunate that my parents allowed that to happen to me. Even though my mother was a fabulous musician and came from a family of just unbelievable musicians. And she did encourage me to take piano, and I didn't want to do it. I wanted to take dancing. And so she was okay with that. Although I love music, and I love every kind of music. I have 100 Spotify playlists. But she never pushed the issue. She let me be my own person. And that was being out at the barn with horses and dancing. And I did love to listen to music because I love the lyrics, Joni Mitchell, James Taylor. Oh God, just so many people in that era that I just loved. And I think that had a lot to do with why I became a writer. But I think today we're regressing from that. We're like becoming very collective, where everybody has to sort of think the same, feel the same, dress the same, just everything the same. And it seems like there's a shift in our government by certain people who just want to disregard diversity. And I think diversity is just so important. And we need our kids, no matter whether they're gay or transgender or Black or Chinese or whatever they are, they need to feel very, very special, because they are, like we're all like a snowflake, nobody's alike. And they've actually done so many studies on this. And it's just amazing that there's just so many people, but we're all different, and we just, it's amazing when you think about it. We may share a lot of similar beliefs, and we may share same interests, and maybe like some of the same things, but there's just something about each one of us that makes us so incredibly special. And to me, that's almost like our sacredness. I have a different kind of belief about God probably than a lot of people. I was raised Presbyterian, and I certainly love to go to church. I'm an Episcopalian now, and there's nothing nicer for me than to go sit in a small church, an old church with stained glass windows, candlelight services, and I love the reverence of the Episcopal Church. But everyone sort of has a different idea of religion, and we need to keep it that way. We need to make sure that everybody can worship the way they want to or not worship, depending on their viewpoints. It's just that individuality. And we just don't want a country, really a world, where just a few people in a country are determining, what we read, what we believe, how we're supposed to be, just all of those things. It's just goes against everything that God created. And I don't think God makes mistakes. And I shared in the last podcast that I have a sister who's developmentally disabled. And in so many ways, her life has been so heartbreaking. And of course, I would not have wished for her to have been aborted or anything like that. But she had a very loving family, and my parents were dedicated to her. But for so many children who face disabilities of different kinds and illnesses, they don't have that, and families don't have the resources. And life can be really, really very bad, and a lot of these children are abandoned. And so it's not like they lead these wonderful lives that so many people like to think that they live, but so many of us, we walk away from all these problems. It's good to say I'm pro-life, but we really aren't pro-life unless we really love children. And that doesn't just mean the children that we choose to love. That means all children, and we don't do that. And so until we can love all children, we shouldn't put very sick children or children who have just unbearable disabilities. We should not force them to even come into a world that does not want them, that will not love them. It's just not fair. So it's just we need to think more about just welcoming people into our energy and accepting theirs. So there's a couple things I want to read that kind of go along with tonight. I hope I don't run out of time because I'm really excited about all of this. But the first thing is I want to read something out of this book that I'm reading, and I just love this book, and it's called The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. And this book is made up of a collection of neologisms, and the author he did the etymology on different words to come up with these words, and all of these words represent some type of feeling that almost all of us experience at some time or another, or some of these anyway. That there really is not a word in the English language to define those feelings, and it's just really interesting to hear what he comes up with. And I hope I'll pronounce them right. I may not, but just bear with me. But anyway, the thing about neologisms is that I homeschooled my son, even though my father was a public school superintendent, and I did that for a couple of reasons, which I won't go into. But we were just going to do it through the third grade, and then it was going so well. He really wanted to continue homeschooling, and so we did. And one thing that we started in the first grade was we would look up online the word of the day, and we would talk about also making up words. We would make up words. And so I wanted to share with you that the word of today is expedite. And although that's a fairly common word, it's every day when you look at words, you realize that there are words you've never seen before, or that you don't use very regularly, or have kind of become somewhat vintage. And so it was a great experience for my son, because now he has a very rich vocabulary, and did it even as a child, because all these different words were presented to him on a daily basis. So go to the word of the day and see what words maybe you don't recognize. But this one, I don't think you do going to recognize. And again, this is in the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, and it's John Koenig is the author, and I hope I pronounced his name correctly. So anyway, the word is Vemodalen, and I hope that's correct. It may not be, but you'll understand what it is. Okay, the fear that originality is no longer possible. You are unique, and you are surrounded by billions of other people, just as unique as you. Each of us is different, with some new angle on the world. So what does it mean if the lives we're busy shaping by hand all end up looking the same? We all spread out, looking around for scraps of frontier, trying to capture something special, something personal. But when you gather all our scattered snapshots side by side, the results are often uncanny. There's the same close-up of an eye, the same raindrops on a window, the same selfie in the side view mirror, the airplane wingtip, the pair of bare legs stretched out on a beach chair, the loopy rosette of milk in a latte. The same meals are photographed again and again, the same monuments pinched between fingers, the same waterfalls, sunset after sunset. It should be a comfort that we're not so different, that our perspectives so neatly align. If nothing else, it's a reminder that we live in the same world. Still, it makes you wonder, how many of your snapshots could easily be replaced by 1,000 identical others? Is there any value left in taking yet another photo of the moon or the Taj Mahal or the Eiffel Tower? Is a photograph just a kind of souvenir to prove you've been someplace? Like a prefabricated piece of furniture that you happen to have assembled yourself. It's all right if you tell the same jokes we've all heard before. It's all right if we keep remaking the same movies. It's all right if we keep saying the same phrases to each other as if they had never been said before. Even when you look back to the earliest known work of art in existence, you'll find a handprint stenciled on the wall of a cave. Not just one, but hundreds overlapping, each indistinguishable from the others. To be sure, you and I and billions of others will leave our mark on the world we've inherited, just like the billions who came before us. But if in the end we find ourselves with nothing left to say, nothing new to add, idly tracing outlines left by others long ago, it'll be as if we were never here at all. This too is not an original thought. As the poet once said, the powerful play goes on, and you will contribute a verse. What else is there to say? When you get your cue, you say your line. I just love that. And I just think it's just wonderful. And I think, when we think about school for our children and their lives, we really want them to have the opportunity to, be themselves. And I think with AI coming on so big and with schools needing to be reinvented, the first thing we need to look at is making sure that when children need to say their cue, when it's their time to say what they need to say, whether it's something they've invented, something they've written, something they've painted, something they've built, it doesn't really matter, something they've done, that they actually are ready. So the story I'm going to tell you is this may seem a little odd, but with what I've already talked about, but when I was a kid, I had a dog named Wendy, and she was half German Shepherd and half Collie. She was an unusual dog. She would try to bite the Eggman that delivered eggs, and she would try to bite the milkman who brought the milk to the front porch. And we would have to try to keep her in, and invariably someone would forget and leave her out, and then the poor guy was terrified as she was running after him. And right now, I am taking care of a German Shepherd, a stray German Shepherd, who is living in the woods near the farm where I walk my dogs. And at first she was terrified of me. She wouldn't come near me. She would hide in the bushes. And I've just been very patient with her. And today she's eaten out of my hand several times, but today she was so happy to see me, and she couldn't get close enough. She just wanted me to pet her. And she put her paw on my shoulder. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is amazing, and that's how we, accept people and accept, all creatures, and everyone wants to belong and feel a part of things. So when this story takes place, my sister, who's developmentally disabled, she was off at a school in Virginia, a private school in an old house, and there were, I don't know, maybe 20 students. It was really a wonderful experience for her. It was in Stoudemire, Virginia. It was just beautiful there. And so I was the only child for just a little while at home. And my parents were going to go off with some good friends to New York City. And they rarely did stuff like this. My parents pretty much stayed at home, with all of us. And so there was a neighbor who lived up the street, across the road, the main road, what kind of a main road? Neighborhood road. And down the hill, very close to where we lived. And I was friends with their daughter. And so I was going to stay with them for the weekend. So my parents left on Friday morning, and I was going to go home from school with them. But then that afternoon, after 6 o'clock, around dinner time, a lady was going to pick me up that was going to keep me at the house at home and look after our dog, Wendy. And so my parents left that morning. And I was I went to school just like every day, and I went home with my friend Karen, and it started snowing that day, and it was snowing at school actually, and it just kept snowing and snowing, and it was snowing a lot. It was unusual for us to have that kind of snowstorm, and of course my parents were already on their way to New York, and they weren't getting into any snow. This was like a southern snowstorm. And those are the ones, that come up from on 85 and through Atlanta and just right up to us, all the way to Charlotte, and they keep going. So, so I was really worried about my dog because, we were going to take care of her. And she was my parents were going to put her in the basement until we had a chance to get there, and then we could let her out. So I told the lady, that I was very concerned about my dog, that my dog was inside, and it was looking like that the lady that was going to pick me up, she was not going to be able to show up. And so, because she actually lived up in Upper Cleveland County, which made it a little treacherous for her to drive in to the city to stay with me. So I was going to end up staying with my friend. Well, the mother was very unlike my mother, and she wasn't really keen about me going to look after the dog. And I don't think she really had a whole lot of feelings for the dog. So, but I don't know what made me be very stern, but I just told her that I was going to have to go home to look after my dog. And so she said, well, you can do that, but Karen is not going. And I said, okay. And I was really, when I think about it, I can't believe how brave I was to really just stand up to this mother, And so I'm going to read this to you. And it's kind of like, this is more like a narrative poem kind of thing. Like I said, I was trying to do something a little different. It's not rhymey or anything like that, but it's going to be a little shorter this way, and you'll get the story. So let me read you about the story of me trekking in the snow to take care of my pup, Wendy. It was January. I was 7 years old. My parents escaped for New York City. I was staying with a friend. My dog, Wendy, a collie of sorts, was home alone. I had to figure things out. That night, a snowstorm blanketed the south, a foot of white, deep snow. So at 7 years old, I decided to walk home alone. I trekked through very deep snow to my house in the neighborhood, my fingers cold, shivering. I pulled the key from my pocket, unlocked the basement door. My tracks marked in heavy, untouched snow. I pulled and pulled at the heavy door. A frozen drift had made a home. Wendy, my pup, came flying out, so happy to see me. Running circles in the snow, I watched her happiness. As we turned to the door to venture inside together, shaking, we walked into the very dark, empty, very quiet basement. I had never gone into the house alone before. The only sound was the hum of the deep freezer. We walked into the den and up the stairs. I was afraid. It was so familiar, and yet it was eerily strange. My mom and dad were very far away. My second trip to the house, later that day, I remember the settling late afternoon chill, a southern deep freeze. The deep snow was glistening on top, the crunch, crunch as I walked home alone. I pulled the key from my pocket, unlocked the door. I stood firm, pulling the frozen brass knob. Everything cool blue, frozen, surreal. Wendy ran out circles. She drew in the snow, joyfulness at my return. The sun was setting. The day was short. I had to hurry. I poured fresh water, prepared Wendy's food, crept back through the house, everything still untouched. I left a light on, locked the door. It was almost dark as I said goodbye and shut the big, heavy wooden door. My parents would soon return. I woke early, gathered my things, and headed home. The morning sun, the blue sky made me walk faster. I was less afraid. The sun poured into the house. It felt warm on my face. The snow was melting. Grass was peeking out. In the late afternoon, I watched from the window. My parents pulled into the driveway. I called Wendy. We ran to meet them. I thought they would be angry, but they were proud. I grew up a little that weekend. It is funny that feeling I had entering the house alone for the first time. I still feel the same, often, I should say. At 7 years old, I learned just push the door open, walk inside. It feels somewhat familiar, yet eerily strange until it doesn't. I turned the light on inside of my chest and never let the voice inside my head stop its chattering. To take a rest, I move in spaces I dare not regress. So the reason I selected the story is because as a kid, that was one of the first times that I actually stood up to an adult and did what I thought was right. And although it may have seemed very strange to her that that was that important to me to go home and make sure that my dog was okay. And I was very afraid. I mean, I vividly remember, going to the house and it being so empty, that liminal feel of, a place that's supposed to be just having so much going on and it's just empty. And the quiet, it was so quiet because I was used to, walking in the house and my mother and dad were talking and I could hear doors closing and the refrigerator opening and closing, the TV on, all those sounds that we are so used to, we almost blocked them out. But there was nothing. It was just nothing, quiet. And so it was a really brave thing for me to do that, to walk home, go into the basement. Sometimes basements seem a little extra scary rather than going in upstairs. And then just walking up the steps by myself, knowing there was nobody upstairs, it was really, really strange. But yet, I knew it was the thing that I should do. And so my parents, they weren't angry with me. Actually, they were very proud of me that the weekend had really not turned out the way it was supposed to. And yet I took that responsibility to make sure that everything was okay at the house. And I know the mother of the friend that I stayed with, she wasn't that happy with me. I think she thought I was somewhat rebellious. But, sometimes we have to be rebellious. Sometimes we have to learn to have a voice, and sometimes we have to learn to stand up for other people, and we have to do what we think is the best thing at the time. And we have far too many people who aren't doing that. We have all kinds of people right now being bullied by people in office and power. And these are people who, are trying to live their authentic selves. And we can't determine that for other people. We have to value people and make sure that everybody has a sense of belonging in our communities and in the country, because none of us are alike, just like a snowflake. Everybody is different. And I've always felt that I was a little bit different. I kind of did beat to a different drum. I loved my friends, and I call them my huckleberry friends, and I love them. And we had so much fun growing up. But I like doing some different things, and I liked being by myself some too. And so I was just a little different, but my parents gave me the okay to be that way. They never pushed me to be anything else, but really who I was. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. Because I've had friends where it wasn't that way. It was situations where they could never please their parents, that what they wanted to do is different from what their parents wanted them to do. And, their parents just never understood them. And there was this bridge that neither could cross, and it's sad for it to be that way. We have to love people for who they are. And so in my book, there's going to be other stories that have a similar theme, but I've just thought so much. This week has been well, actually the last 10 days, with the stray dog. I've had everything from, people have been following the story on Facebook, and so many of them love her, and they want me to keep her, and I'm being cheered along. And then there's some people who just think she should go to the pound, and that she's just a dog, just get rid of her, and that's the way a lot of people felt about my sister growing up. They would tell my mother and my dad, just put her somewhere, go on with your life, just put her somewhere. And of course, my parents could never do that. And so it's, I just think that we can't be that flippant, I guess. We need to care about everybody, and everybody has things going on in their lives, and we don't often know what that is, and some things much more serious than other things. And of course, the whole random act of kindness is so great, and we definitely should practice that. But we also need to understand that, everybody suffers. That's one thing that no one leaves the earth without some kind of suffering. And no doubt, some people suffer a lot more than others. But in knowing suffering, and once you experience your own suffering in degrees, it kind of humbles you to a point where, you do start feeling for others. But, in a country as wealthy as the United States, in my opinion, and of course, this is just my opinion, but I don't see how we can call ourselves a Christian country when we have people who can't afford to go to the doctor, who can't afford treatments, who can't buy groceries, who are living on the street, maybe because they have mental illness or drug addiction. We let corporations flippantly I'm going to use that word again, flippantly, let people go from work so that they can reach a bottom line that otherwise would not be achieved. And then these people can't feed their families. They can't they have trouble finding work. It affects who they are. I was reading an article just the other day about how people really almost identify with the work they do. And people are more concerned about what somebody does than really who they are. And that if you go somewhere, that's one of the first questions, what do you do? And depending on what you do, oh, there goes my alarm. Hang on. There you go. Sorry, my time's almost up. That alarm really works. I tell you, old alarm clocks are the best. If you have trouble getting up, it beats the iPhone any old day. I'm sure you could tell. It's like, oh, but anyway, yeah. I mean, I was reading this article that was saying, maybe we should stop asking people what they do. Maybe we just start asking people what they love. And it's interesting how we have somehow had this manufactured society create such a situation that it's more important what we do than who we are. And I just think, who we are is really important, and who we are is unique. And so I'm going to get back to what I said at the beginning, like the book that I love that has the neologisms. When it's time for us to say our line, we need to make sure that we've had the opportunity to do that, and that we giving our part to the world. And whether it's being an artist or being some type of doctor or a nurse or a politician or a teacher, someone who builds things, someone who plants things, we need all of that. And all of it is noble work. And I was reading, I'm going to have to end this because I really only have 40 minutes and I get carried away, but I was reading about how in Maine now, the farmers, 40% of the farmers in Maine now are under 35. And nationally, that's not the case, but in Maine, that's the way it is. And it's like a growing trend where farming is coming back into vogue in a way. But the reason it is because these farmers, want to grow things sustainably in a way that is healthy for the planet, healthy for people, and they consider it noble work. And I think, when I read the noble work part, that's just something we don't even think about anymore. It's all about how much money somebody makes. And there's so many things that we can do that's really noble. And we need to get back to that where we're serving, the planet, our communities, our families, our friends, instead of it all being about consumerism and what we can buy and what we have and, all of that. And hopefully, maybe with climate change, maybe slowly we will kind of reinvent ourselves into a different society and start really caring about everybody and their differences, and find that interesting to talk to people that are different. In fact, someone told me that, people who are different, you can sit for hours and talk to them because it's just so interesting. And when people are all the same, I mean, really, what do you have much to talk about? So find your uniqueness and don't hide it. Don't, it's your superpower. So anyway, this is the end for tonight and or this afternoon. I'm going to go out and see my my stray shepherd. I named her Gypsy Rhodes, and she really is a sweet girl. So I hope I can find a great situation for her. So you have a great rest of the week, and we'll catch up next week. And I'll read you another story from my childhood. And take care and be safe. And we'll talk soon. All right, bye.